Hello and welcome to today's video. Today we are here and once again it's time for the racing debrief. And this week we have two races to talk about from Iowa for Xfinity and Cup Series. Of course, the debut race at Iowa for the Cup Series. So overall, going into the weekend, I was very excited. I'm actually back in 2015. I made a post. Right, I made a tweet back then. It says definitely need at NASCAR Sprint Cup because it's 2015 to race at Iowa Speedway. So I made that post and I really liked seeing what I seen on that track. Now for me, back then I didn't always watch Xfinity and truck races, so it's probably the first time I ever watched a race at Iowa because I didn't really watch Xfinity races before like 2015. I had not watched it when I was younger, and then I had about 2011, 12, 13, I stopped watching NASCAR. I don't really know why. It was a few years I didn't really watch it. And then 2014 I got back into watching it. And then 2015 I watched a lot of Xfinity and truck series. That's really the first time I ever seen it. And I was like, this is really cool. Obviously, at that point, Cup cars hadn't really raced on different tracks, right? The only new track that really came on the calendar for that long of time was Kentucky. So it would have been cool to see Iowa back then. I think that those cars would have raced it well. But, I made that post back then, so it's kind of cool to see that actually from May 17th. So that's all the way back basically 9 years ago from when this video is going to be uploaded. So very cool to kind of see that connection. But I remember making that post. I remember watching the Xfinity race, whatever it was that day, at my grandparents' house, watching it on TV. And I was like, I'm going to make this as a tweet. So very cool to kind of, look back now and see what, see that that's happening. See that that's a reality. So that's cool. Obviously, see Iowa return to Xfinity Series. It hadn't raced since 2019. It hadn't raced since 2019. It was one of the tracks that got taken off due to COVID in 2020, and it just never came back for whatever reason. But this year it did. So that was kind of cool to see it return for Xfinity Series and make its debut for the Cup Series. I think it's a brilliant track. It does kind of race like Richmond, but I think there's a little bit more to it. I think Richmond's I don't know, I've always thought Richmond's been quite a boring track, so this definitely had a little bit more than Richmond to it. So for the Xfinity Series, we've seen a lot of tire failures. That was a common theme throughout the whole weekend, whether it was Cup or Xfinity, but Xfinity Series, we've seen a high amount of it. Definitely that shakes up a lot of the races, because I don't think that there was a run for more than 30 laps in that race. For whatever reason, the surface was definitely affecting on the repaved area. There was basically two sections of the track. You had the lower groove that was repaved. It looks very strange, especially the way that it kind of connects into the higher groove on the exit of the turn. But, repaved Iowa in the bottom lane in both corners of the track. So you had that. You've seen some tire failures there. But, it was consistent in the Xfinity Series. Drivers couldn't really go more than 30, 35, 40 laps, whatever it was, in that range without a tire failure. So it was interesting to sort of see that play out throughout the whole race. Ultimately, Sam Mayer gets the win. But unfortunate to see that, waiting all day, coming home from work, and coming home from work, putting on the race, going through it, pausing a few times, finally getting to it like 10 o'clock. I finished watching the race. Disappointing to come home to a Sam Mayer win, but it's what happens. Again, I think the Xfinity Series race was solid. I liked what we seen out of it. The chaos of the tire failures always adds to a race. I don't think that should be a weekly occurrence, but it does add a little bit of what's going to happen, who is next, right? It is interesting to see. So that was, of course, a talking point going into the Cup race, because There was a few tire failures on the Cup side going into practice sessions. So in practice, we've seen a few tire failures. I know Christopher Bell was one of them, and that was obviously a talking point of that issue, that incident, right? So what were we going to see throughout the rest of the weekend, right? We're going to see more tire failures. And there were some tire failures. I don't think it was on an extreme level. You had AJ Allmendinger, who also had a tire failure in the Xfinity race, so I'm sure he was just ready to leave Iowa. You had a lot of them under caution, or not under caution, but under like green flag pit stops, and guys were able to get to the pit, so you didn't really have a caution for it. Like, I remember AJ Allmendinger was really the only one that pops in my mind as a guy that had a tire failure, and there was a caution. Because I remember Ross Chastain had one, I think Eric Jones had one. There was a few other guys. Those are the ones I couldn't remember in my mind, thinking back to it. But yeah, it was one of those things that there were a few tire failures, but it wasn't too wild. The first stage you had, was it Ryan Blaney won the first stage? I think Ryan Blaney snuck in and won the first stage. Kyle Larson kind of dominated the first stage, but Ryan Blaney snuck in and got the win in that. Stage 2, was that also? No, I don't remember who won stage 2. I know it wasn't Blaney because he's got 7 playoff points. He had one other stage win this year. So I don't remember who else won stage 2. Some guy won stage 2. Great analysis there. Obviously, Ryan Blaney gets the win in the end. I think it was a good race, though. I do think that of all the short track races that we've seen, I think that, through, you could get to guys. You could, there were mistakes to be made, right? I think that at a lot of the short track races we've had, whether it's been Phoenix, Martinsville, North Wilkesboro, those types of tracks, Richmond, right? Those have all been tracks that you've kind of been able to drive through it. You make a mistake, boom, you're back on the gas, you're good. It seems like Iowa, you would slide up and make those mistakes, and it would affect you, because I think that the repaved area, compared to the non-repaved area, definitely created an interesting element that we didn't see at some of those other tracks, right? I think that helped. I think you could get to guys that maybe you could drive a little deeper and get to somebody, which I feel like we hadn't really seen a lot of those other tracks, right? So I think that's interesting. So, that was a unique scenario, definitely to have play out. Again, I think that of all the short track races, besides Bristol from this year, which was pure chaos, Bristol doesn't even feel real. When I think of that race, it doesn't even feel like it really happened. Every other race, it seemed kind of boring. And I honestly thought going into this weekend, it's going to be so boring. I think a lot of people thought that from the fact of the repave being half the groove, everybody's going to drive that. But it really actually worked, right? There were 2 lines in it, which I think we've seen at some of these other repaved tracks, right? North Wilkesboro, you're able to move around. So if you can move around, you're good, right? I think we've seen that at tracks that historically haven't been great, right? New Hampshire, the last few years, guys have been able to move around a little bit, and it has improved the racing at that track. I don't really know how New Hampshire that happened at, but it has worked. The guys are going different grooves. So a lot of the short tracks need to have different grooves to have it work. And I think Iowa, you're really seeing that, because in the repaved area, there's 2 grooves, and then if you got out of that, you're done, right? So I think that the repave did work. I don't really know why they repaved it, but it did work. I think it's a good idea. Definitely created an interesting element to the track. I think that next time, if they wait 2-3 years, and maybe even 4 or 5 years, repave the top. The bottom will be the older pavement. I think you could have another interesting race that way. I think you'll probably see a similar race next year with the 2 grooves like that. But overall, I thought it was a good race. I think that the track worked. I think that, again, the repave worked. I think what we've seen from Iowa was a solid product. I definitely enjoyed it. I think that 2015 me would have been happy with that race, right? What was I thinking in 2015? You know, what would me at 16, what did I want to see in a race? I think I would have liked that race. I really do. Then me at 16 would agree with me at 25 that that race was good. But yeah, I think that Iowa, it's just cool to see on the schedule. It's always cool when there's a new event. That's always fun to see. Obviously, the fans really showed up for that. I mean, it sold out. What was it, within the first day or two? Like, I remember when it was just selling out. They announced Iowa and everybody had to buy a ticket for it. So, cool for there to be a race in Iowa. Again, I think it's one of those things that there's local areas that you don't really think about putting a race at. I think a lot of fans don't think that, right? I mean, obviously, I've seen that with the fact that New Hampshire is the closest race to me. It's the only track I've ever been to for NASCAR, right? It's New England's track. So to have a race here, it doesn't stand out on the calendar to a lot of people. It doesn't necessarily do anything for a lot of people, but for fans in this area, fans in New England, it's a special track to have, right? It's a special event to go to. So I think that for Iowa, maybe it doesn't stand out on the schedule as we're racing Iowa, right? It's Iowa. It's the Midwest. It's the area that you kind of just don't think about. But for the people that live there, to have a NASCAR Cup race in that area, within those few hundred miles, it is a special thing to have. So it's cool to see those areas get tracks. Because, again, I understand that. I see people say, oh, we don't need New Hampshire. Why is that on the calendar? So I can see that for tracks like Iowa, right? It's maybe not the biggest area. Maybe it's a more remote track. But it serves an important part of the community. So I understand that. But yeah, no, I think Iowa, brilliant. I enjoyed it. Looking forward to next year. So, speaking of New Hampshire, that is next week's race, and I'm super excited because I'm gonna be there. So, looking forward to that. Yeah, it's gonna be a special weekend. Obviously, I went last year, so that was cool. Last year was the first time I went in 10 years. Of course, I wore this shirt to the race. It's Kevin Harvick's final Cup race at New Hampshire. Fun time I got to see him race in a Cup car. So that was a special moment. I remember kind of the last 10, 15 laps of the race. It was really just watching his car go around the track, right? Because during the race, you're just focused on the cars. I mean, I don't think many people just lock in and just focus on that one car going around the track for all 300 laps, right? But those last 15 laps was definitely just like watching that 4 car go around. So that was cool. That was special. This year, obviously, Ty Gibbs' my favorite driver now, but it's different when it's the second season, right? So obviously, it'd be cool to see Ty Gibbs race, but just to see NASCAR race in person is always fun. I had fun the other years I went in, 20 or 2000, 2008. 2013. Yeah. Oh, 2009. 2008, 2009, 2013, 2023. So, 5th Cup race. 6th time overall I went. I went in 2007 to the Truck Series race. So, there's that. But yeah. Overall, looking forward to just going, being in there, getting, vacation. Taking a break. Right now, I'm working on getting content done. I'm currently getting my stuff set up. So I'm in this spot. If I'm here and you're watching one of these videos, if you see this background, it means I'm about to record a video. So we got race playlist to record. Tomorrow's versus challenge. Or no, Racing Masters today versus challenge. Tomorrow, race playlist on Tuesday. And then I'm taking the time to enjoy not doing content, not working, working my job. Just gonna, relax. I'm off from Wednesday to the Thursday after. I'm not in New Hampshire the whole time, but I'm home, chilling, relaxing. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. So what does that mean for the racing debrief, or for channel content in general, or for FCW content in general, because we're on YouTube and on X? Nothing really changes. Racing debrief goes out on Tuesday next week. Normally it's on a Monday. It'll be on a Tuesday. That's really the only change. The only other really big change is that Racing Masters you see this week was recorded last Wednesday, and Racing Masters you see next week is recorded after this video is recorded. That's really the only change, right? Is that the Racing Masters video is a week ahead. Just for scheduling purposes, of course, I normally record on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So Sunday I'm in New Hampshire, so I can't record. And then we also have Versus Challenge takes a week off just because scheduling a fill-in video for that not really happening. So only thing you're going to see next week is Versus Challenge isn't there, and Racing Debrief is on a Tuesday because I'm going to come home sometime on Monday and sit down and record it. I don't really want to. When I'm by goal, and just like last year when I was on vacation that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday because it rained, I was in the mindset of we're not focused on making videos, we're not focused on WCW content. Just, that's a thing that exists, but it's over here right now. So I would just want to be in that moment. So obviously this is taking into time. So yeah, next week's Racing Debrief, we're going to be talking about NASCAR Cup Series racing and NASCAR Xfinity Series race from New Hampshire. And Formula One is racing the Spanish Grand Prix. Not sure if I'm going to watch it or talk about it, just because that is on Sunday morning. It all depends on how things play out on Sunday morning. When we have to leave the hotel to go to the track and all that stuff. I would imagine I probably would watch it on my phone because the race is 9 a.m. goes till 10:30. Depends on if we have to leave the hotel before 10:30. I guess that's the real factor. But either way, next week we'll definitely be talking about NASCAR Xfinity Series and Cup Series, and maybe Formula One. We'll see. But either way, thank you for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next week on Tuesday on YouTube and on X for the Racing Debrief New Hampshire Weekend Vacation Edition.